Concentrated liquidity in DeFi is truly changing the way that we provide liquidity in DeFi and how market makers function. With that being said, this literally is the future of DeFi and allows for crazy capital efficiency and to earn a crazy high yield. Now, there are many concentrated liquidity platforms out there, but the one that we're going to be taking a look at in this video is Uniswap v3. And Uniswap v3 is the third version of Uniswap, which actually pioneered the space for concentrated liquidity and is the first initial concept of this in action. And with that being said, I do seem to think that Uniswap v3 is also the best place to provide liquidity because pretty much 4 out of 5 times you're going to get the best possible return on Uniswap, because since they have such a high TVL, they also have such a high volume, so they are dominating the space. So before we talk about Uniswap v3, I do want to set a baseline and a standard of what normal liquidity providing is. So we're going to use Uniswap v2 for example, because that was the version prior to Uniswap v3. So with that being said, all of your liquidity is spread across every single possible price point. So if the price of Bitcoin goes to, let's just say $1, and you're providing liquidity for Bitcoin to USDC, well then that $1 price point is possible. There is liquidity on that $1 price point. If Bitcoin goes to $1,999,000, there is liquidity on $1,999,000, which is good because that means that there is liquidity on every single possible price point. But at the same time, it doesn't really make sense to provide liquidity for Bitcoin at the $1 price point, or even $5, $10, $100, or even a few $1,000s. And it also does not make sense to provide liquidity on Bitcoin for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, at least in the foreseeable future. And the reason why is because these price points are very, very far away from the current price point. So we're providing liquidity on them, but they are not being used. The reason why these price points are not being used is because there is no trading volume on those price points. Let's assume this number line right here represents liquidity distribution for a Bitcoin to USDC pair. So the current price of the pool is $25,000, and everybody is providing V2 liquidity. That means that everybody is providing liquidity on a range of $0 to infinity dollars. That means that liquidity is evenly distributed across every single possible price point. Well, if Bitcoin trades between, let's just say, a $24,000 range and a $26,000 range, and it keeps going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, these price points are actually being used. So the liquidity is earning fees, and the liquidity is actually earning more money. Whereas all these price points over here are not being used because there is no trading volume on those price points. Bitcoin did not dip down to, let's just say, $1,000 and then bounce up to $25,000. It dipped down to $24,000, meaning any price point below $24,000 is not being used and is not active. So ultimately, that is not capital efficient because there are so many possible price points and you're providing liquidity on every single one of them. A system that would be more efficient would be to provide liquidity strictly on the price points that Bitcoin is trading between. So let's just say 24,000 to 26,000. And the reason why is because if we're providing $1,000 across every single price point right here, well then our $1,000 is split amongst a ton of different price points. Let's just assume our $1,000 is split amongst 1,000 price points. That equals $1 per price. Whereas if we're providing concentrated liquidity right over here, then our $1,000 would be split amongst fewer price points. Let's just assume it's 50 price points. That basically means that there's $20 per price point. So there's the same amount of liquidity, but since you're not providing liquidity on every single possible price point and you're providing it on fewer price points, the ones that are actually being used, your capital efficiency is higher because you have more money on the individual price points. Now, to compare Uniswap v2 versus Uniswap v3, this is a full range liquidity pool on Ethereum to USDC on the Ethereum network. It currently has $383 million in TVL with an average daily volume of $150 million. As you can see, full range liquidity will get us an APR of roughly 1.43%. Now, with that being said, if we go ahead and flick off this full range bar and we set it to something like 1,500 to maybe something like 1,700, then as you can see, our APR drastically shoots up to about 46% because we're now providing liquidity on fewer price points as opposed to full range. Additionally, you'll notice something right here change. You'll see that the deposit amount of USDC and Ethereum is different. We're putting up about 60% Ethereum and about 40% USDC. Whereas if we're on full range liquidity, you can see we put up 50-50 of each asset, and it will always be 50-50 no matter what the price goes to. So let's look at this impermanent loss calculator and assume token A is USDC and token B is Ethereum. If the price starts at 1,500 and the price goes to, let's just say, $2,000, we have 1% of impermanent loss. Now we still have 50% of each asset. We have $577 in token A, which is USDC, and 0.29 token B, which is 0.29 Ethereum, which would be equal to $577. So we don't have much impermanent loss. We only have about 1% of impermanent loss. Whereas let's just say we're in a concentrated liquidity pool with a range of $1,500 to $1,700, and the current price is $1,577. Now remember, we are providing 60% Ethereum and 40% USDC. Assuming USDC stays at the same price and the price of Ethereum goes to $2,000, you can see we actually have 11% in permanent loss, which is pretty crazy. And that's because our assets are shifted around over time. As you can see, by the time the price is $2,000 at the very end of our range, we now have full exposure to USDC. So we have 1,022 USDC tokens in this liquidity pool, whereas we have 0 Ethereum tokens. Now, same thing were to go vice versa. If the price dips below our bottom range, which is 1,500, let's just say it goes to 1,400. We now have full exposure to Ethereum. We have 0.64 Ethereum tokens, which are worth $896. So to further demonstrate that, we have this position breakdown by token chart, which pretty much represents how much token we have in the pool at a specific price point. So when the pool crosses over the $1,700 mark, which is 1,700 USDC per Ethereum, you can see we're stuck in full USDC and we don't gain any more USDC, even if the price goes to, let's just say, $10,000 per Ethereum token. That is because we are out of range and we have incurred that impermanent loss already. So as you can see, no matter what the price point is, after the top of a range, 1,022 USDC tokens. Same thing vice versa. As the price goes below our range, we now have exposure to 0.64 Ethereum tokens, and as the price continues to fall below our range, let's just say 662, we still have 0.64 Ethereum tokens. They are just worth less money because, of course, Ethereum is continuing to decline. So what that means is in an Ethereum to USDC pool, our gains are cut off at roughly $1,022, whereas our losses are unlimited as long as Ethereum is continuing to go down. So basically, if you look at this chart right here, as you lose the Ethereum tokens, you gain exposure to USDC tokens, whereas as you lose exposure to USDC tokens, you gain exposure to Ethereum tokens. So basically what this means is if the price does rise, your Ethereum is being sold into USDC, whereas if the price does fall, your USDC is being used to buy Ethereum basically. Whereas when you're in a V2 liquidity pool, the ratio is always meant to stay 50-50. So if you have, let's just say, $600 of one asset, you must have $600 of the other asset. So in the case scenario of a V2 pool, if we put $500 of both assets in a liquidity pool, so that's $1,000 total, as the price of Ethereum rises, it sells just the right amount to give us equal exposure to both Ethereum and USDC in terms of dollar value. And if you guys do want to learn more about Uniswap V2, I do have a blog post that I put out down below in the description. We also have a free Uniswap V3 PDF guide that will be linked down below in the description. All you have to do is enter your name and email so we can send you over access. So a brief little recap of what we talked about so far. With Uniswap V2 strategies, we're providing liquidity across the full price curve. So we're providing liquidity on every single possible price point. Whereas with concentrated liquidity, we're providing liquidity across a set amount of price points. And that set amount can be anything. It could be whatever you choose. You could do something super narrow, which is like $1,500 to $1,600, or you could do something super broad like $1,000 to $2,000. Now I do also want to talk about the pros and cons of Uniswap V2 versus Uniswap V3. So one of the major benefits of Uniswap V3 is it does allow liquidity to be placed on the current price points, allowing for deeper liquidity on the current price points. That means at the price point of, let's just say, $27,000, $28,000 per Bitcoin, we have a really good amount of liquidity, which means that we're not going to have much slippage as a trader when we're executing a trade. That basically means that there can be more trades without the price moving nearly as much. It's going to be more stable because there is deeper liquidity. But the downside to this is there isn't nearly as much liquidity on further out price points. So as you can see over here at the price point of, let's just say, $24,000 per Bitcoin, there is barely any liquidity compared to the price points that Bitcoin is at now. So that means if the price quickly goes over to the price point of, let's just say, $23,000, $24,000 per Bitcoin, we are going to see increased volatility with Bitcoin, and we are going to see more swings in this liquidity pool. That basically means a $100,000 trade over here might shoot the price up, let's just say 10%, or shoot the price down 10%, whereas a $100,000 trade over here might shoot the price down, 2% or up 2%. And that's because there are more liquidity on these current price points as opposed to the outlier price points. Additionally, if nobody was providing full range liquidity, not every single price point would be possible for Bitcoin. Bitcoin could only go to a certain price point before the liquidity is exhausted. Whereas with Uniswap V2, it's pretty much an equal amount of liquidity across every possible price point, which basically means that you have decent liquidity across every single price point. Whereas with Uniswap V3, you have deep liquidity on current price points and bad liquidity on the outlier price points. So to further look at Uniswap V3, we have an example of Alice and Bob. Alice is using a V2 strategy, so 50-50 liquidity dispersed across every single price point, whereas Bob is using a V3 strategy, which is basically concentrating his liquidity between $1,000 to $2,500. So Alice puts up $1 million into her Uniswap V2 strategy, whereas Bob puts up $183,500 into his V3 strategy. Now, assuming the price of Ethereum idles between $1,000 to $2,500 For the whole year, Alice will collect about a 50% APR on her $1 million, whereas Bob will collect a 314% APR on his $183,000. So assuming the APR lives up to these standards, after 1 year's time, Bob collects $576,000 in fees off of $183,000, whereas Alice collects $500,000 in fees off of $1 million. So as you can see, the return is much better on Bob's strategy because he put up less capital and was able to make more fees. He literally put up pretty much a fifth of the capital and made more money, which is absolutely nuts, and that just showcases the benefits of concentrated liquidity here. Bob's capital is being 100% effective, whereas Alice's capital is being 15.9% effective because she's providing full range liquidity. Now, if both of them had $1 million at the start, Bob makes the same return, it's just he has to put up a fifth of the capital, so he has $816,000 remaining to do whatever he pleases with. But for a better comparison, let's just assume Alice and Bob both equally invested $1 million into their positions, and they're both still getting a 50% APR and a 314% APR respectively. At the end of 1 year's time, off Bob's $1 million, he comes out to a $3.1 million return off of his $1 million. That's a 314% APR. Whereas Alice comes out to $500,000 still off of her $1 million. So as you can see, Bob's capital is being used way more efficient than Alice's because all of his capital is being used as opposed to only 16% of it being used. Now I also want to break something down for you guys, which is called fee tiers. Uniswap v3 allowed for 4 different fee tiers to be used. One is 0.01%, one is 0.05%, one is 0.3%, and one is 1%. Basically. So you have 4 different fee tiers to select from when you are providing liquidity. And these fee tiers are basically the fee that is collected on the overall trade amount. So on a $100 trade on the 1% fee tier, the liquidity provider would collect $1 as a fee and the trader would get 99% of their trade basically. On the 0.3% fee tier, the liquidity provider would collect 30 cents in fees and the trader would pretty much get 99.7% of their trade. On the 0.05%, well, the liquidity provider collects 5 cents, whereas on the 0.01% fee tier, the liquidity provider collects 1 cent. Now the thing is, as a liquidity provider, you shouldn't just go ahead and capture the 1% fee tier. And the reason why is because if it's a pair like Ethereum to USDC, not a lot of trades will be routed to that 1% fee tier. Now Ethereum to USDC has 4 different pools, and those 4 different pools represent the 4 different fee tiers for this pool. Here we have the Ethereum to USDC pool on the 1% fee tier. As you can see, the volume in the past 24 hours is $100,000 with a TVL of $1.9 million. Additionally, if you look at this chart over here, it is not consistent whatsoever. Whereas if we go over to the 0.3% fee tier, you can see the volume in the past 24 hours is $13 million with a TVL of $66 million. Additionally, you could see a decline in volume, a huge, major decline. And the reason why is because obviously less people have been trading Ethereum. These are bull run numbers over here. But at the same time, more volume has been shifted over to the 0.05% fee tier. As you can see on 0.05%, there is consistent volume, and there's $255 million in past 24-hour volume. That's because traders don't want to pay a 1% fee to trade a blue chip asset like Ethereum. Whereas if you go to an asset like, let's just say RLB, which keep in mind is a random asset off the top of my head, you can see there's a lot of volume still on the 1% fee tier because RLB is just simply more volatile and it's less known. So as a liquidity provider, it's all about back testing to see which one's going to give you the best possible return. With Ethereum, I would look into both 0.05% and both 0.3%, and also you do need to factor in what your range will be. Now I do want to walk you through a quick little Uniswap v3 calculator. It's called Builder Metrics. It will be linked down below in the description. I want to go ahead and give a full disclaimer. This is our in-house tool that we use for our advanced strategies, but at the same time, it is 100% free for you to use. Let's just assume the current price of Ethereum is $15.77. We have a min price of $1,500 and a max price of, let's just say, $16.50. Something like that. Our estimated return on the 0.05% fee tier is 60% APR, which is really nice. We go ahead and select the 0.3% fee tier, and we'll go ahead and enter the same range. We're going to have a different APR. So our min price being $1,500 and our max price being $16.50. You can see on the 0.3% fee tier, we have a much lower APR at 36%. So what this tells me is, yes, the 0.3% fee tier is collecting a higher fee and proportionate to the trade size, but at the same time, since there is way more trading volume compared to the overall liquidity amount on the 0.05% fee tier, that's a better option to go with. Now, Builder Metrics is very easy to use. All you have to do is enter your min price, your max price, and your calculation range. Calculation range is basically how long you plan to be in the pool before re-ranging. So if it's 14 days, you'll type in 14, reload to charts. If it's, let's just say 28 days, type type in 28, reload the charts. And this basically determines how much data it factors into this calculation over here. So if we put 28 days and look at the average fees, it's 12.76K per 24 hours. If we change that to, let's just say 90 days, you could see average fees is about 15K. We could also scroll down and look at the volume. As you can see, there was this volume day where we had pretty much $60 million in volume for Ethereum, which is obviously skewing our results in this 90-day calculation. And the last thing I want to do is walk you through a quick Uniswap V3 tutorial. So as a trader, you can simply go over to Uniswap and trade, let's just say 1 Ethereum for USDC, or you can select whatever assets you want to trade. If you want to trade Ethereum for like LQTY, you could do that as well. This is automatically going to route you through the best possible pool. So the Uniswap API routes you through this Ethereum to LQTY pool, which gets you the best possible return after factoring in slippage in the fee that you pay. So it's pretty simple. You just type in the amount of whatever asset you want to trade for whatever asset you want to trade for, and you hit swap. It'll get you the best possible route. Additionally, as a liquidity provider, you can head over to pools. You can go to new position and then select your pair over here. So let's just say I want to do Ethereum to LQTY. I'd select that. I would use builder metrics to find which fee tier is doing the best. So I'd just simply go over to calculate, and I'd put in Ethereum, and I would also put in LQTY, and I would test out these different fee tiers. We're going to assume that 0.3% is doing the best. So we'd select 0.3% fee tier. We'd go ahead and select our range. So using builder metrics, I'm probably going to have my range something like this, about 1640 on the top and probably about like 500 on the bottom. So 500 to 1640, we'll type that in, 500, 1640. And just like that, we have a range in, and now we have to determine how much we want to deposit. So we go back over to builder metrics. If it's $10,000, we'll type in 10,000. We need 3484 LQTY. It's going to go ahead and automatically tell us how much Ethereum we need, which matches up with builder metrics pretty much. And we would click preview, and then we would click add. So if I were to go ahead and create an LQTY pool, I would approve LQTY. It would prompt my wallet. I would click approve. I'd click preview, and I would click add. And then after my liquidity pool is open, it would look something like this. I want to go ahead and mention that this is my wrap Bitcoin to USDC pool. Currently, I have $20,000 invested into it. But you can see when I'm ready to increase liquidity and add more money to it, I could simply increase, and I'd click add. It does have to be the same ratio that my current assets are. So right now I have 76% USDC, 24% wrap Bitcoin. So I'd have to put up, let's just say $760 in USDC and $240 in wrap Bitcoin if I was doing $1,000 total. Additionally, you could go ahead and remove liquidity and pretty much put the percent amount that you want to go ahead and remove. And you can also go ahead and collect your fees. Your fees are not auto compounded. You have to collect them. So you'd click collect and then collect once again. It would prompt your wallet, and you would sign that, and you would get those assets in your wallet. So as you can see, I get 145 bucks of wrap Bitcoin, 155 bucks of USDC. And then if I wanted to compound those, I would just go over to increase liquidity. If I just wanted to hold in my wallet, I could do whatever I please to do with. And then down here, it will show your price range of the pool and the current price. So this was a pretty value-packed video, but if you guys did enjoy, make sure to drop a like and subscribe when notifications turned on. Additionally, don't forget to check out our free Uniswap V3 guide, as well as builder metrics, which is down below in the description. I'll see you guys in the next one, and peace out.